Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am Tamara Johnson Shealy. It is Saturday, May 23rd. And guys, I cannot believe how quickly this year is passing us by. We're a week away from June. Half the year is almost gone. And what a year it has been. So good morning. I'm waiting for my trusty co-host. And we have Miss Robbie L. Caban. She will be joining us in just a bit as well. But oh my gosh, we are off to a 2020 that I don't think any of us will ever forget. I think David is finally here. Let's see where he is. Good
Hello. Good
morning.
morning. Huh.
No sound, David. We have no sound. Can you
You can't hear me?
wait 1 second? Hopefully you can hear me. 1 second. Can
I
you?
can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you now. My apologies.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You stressed me real
Sorry
bad.
about that. I was I was
Oh,
reading over some of the news, and I kind of lost track of the time. Uh, so how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We are off to a 2020 that I think none of us will ever, ever, ever forget. My son actually graduated from Norcross and we had his virtual graduation. They had their virtual graduation
Mhm.
yesterday. And I don't know what it felt like. I
Yeah.
think he was quite disappointed. And I saw a post from our school board in DeKalb County School Board, per, Vicki Turner, and she actually wrote a really nice piece. I'm going to share it in just a little bit to our graduates. 2020 is, I don't know what kind of year this is. I'm watching my industry, the beauty and barber industry, David, just kind of fall apart. So many people that have been in the industry for a long time. I'm having these outside conversations that they won't be coming back. This COVID,
Yeah.
not just people have not just died physically, which we're going to talk about the disproportionate deaths here in the South, but have died mentally in some capacity.
Yeah.
Things, a lot of people have changed and ideas, and it's like been a total reset, is what I've called it. And I've tried to have more of a positive spin on it because I know there's going to be some good come out of this. I'm just not
Yeah.
sure what it is right now.
Right. Right. I think you're right about that. I mean, there's some uh, um, in some ways, everything has changed and nothing has changed
Mhm.
because,
We're
the
gonna bring Robbie into the conversation. She's here this morning. Let's see. Let's see where she is. Good morning, lady.
Good morning. Can you?
good
How
I'm
morning.
are
sorry. I got these
you?
art. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
You look pretty. We miss you.
I was just gonna say I missed y'all.
We miss you.
I've been listening and I heard you say that you're trying to stay positive and I'm of the same accord. But as always, thank you for having me, Tamara. Fun.
Yeah, we miss you, girl. Yeah, David we're gonna talk about the disproportionate deaths in the South. I'm sure Atlanta, there's probably all kind of stuff happening in ATL, Robbie, that you're gonna fill us in on. So David,
Yeah, well,
Robbie got her notes.
yeah. I'll just mention a few things that look like they're really disturbing. Um, but uh, you know, when I say everything has changed and nothing has changed, the inequalities are still there. Um, and one of the things that I'm wondering about, uh, besides the fact that what we're witnessing is, according to Facing South, which is the Institute for Southern Studies, journal on research, the counties that have the highest rates of infection and death are in the South are Black majority counties, and so that's one thing. I've just got some notes here. Um, that are part of what's going down. Um, but there's uh, some of the things that are happening are that the main centers of the disease um, have been these places where there is forced congregation, right? Um, and so two of those places have been prisons and um, meat processing plants have been two of the real um, uh, centers of the disease. The other place, of course, the really main place has been nursing homes and long-term care facilities. And something like 1/3 of the deaths in the United States are from people who are in nursing homes. And that makes it has some horrible logic to it because people can't, move. Um, but they are vulnerable. They are part of a vulnerable population. But that seems to be the factors that are involved. The other thing, though, that has been happening that nobody's talking about, except in some perverse way, the president, is that the other place that has been a real source of spreading has been churches that open, their congregations to in-house services. And so we've got a lot of places that are sources of the spread. And the other thing about these sources of the spread is that people think that, well, it's confined to nursing homes. It's just those old people, or it's the prisons, or the meatpacking workers. But in fact, all of those places are permeable. All of those places have people who are coming in and out all the time. The prison guards, the meat packing workers themselves, and the churches.
Yeah, let's let Robbie jump in. So Robbie, what's going on in Atlanta? This is a heavily populated minority area. What's
Well, David's spot on. In fact, when he was speaking, I was processing it. This is kind of a real estate consequential factor. Typically throughout the states, the South portion, South Chicago, South Side, South Bronx, et cetera, are results of kind of redlining. God bless you, David, where Black people were not allowed due to restrictive housing covenants, that were legit at the time to purchase in certain areas. So they were all pushed to the South Side, which didn't receive proper infrastructure, quality goods and services, the same funding that the North Side receives. So we are automatically, obviously I live on the South Side of Atlanta, are at a loss with resources. And then the jobs didn't come. It's predominantly industrial, what people didn't want on the North Side, right? What people didn't want in Buckhead, Midtown, et cetera. So the land tends to be more problematic. Remediation is necessary to really develop. And now the trickle effect is on the South Side of Atlanta below 20, the South Side, right? Meaning Henry County, McDonough, Albany, which had one of the highest concentrations of the COVID virus, which, that's what David is referencing, these nursing homes and churches that were inundated. Where I see where I see the main issue to what Tamara is trying to get done and understand people need to work and show that perspective and how it's affecting people of color from this historical background to today is the dense populations in New York and in Connecticut and so on have been effective with contact tracing. The problem, it's such an issue in Georgia, which we haven't done the contact tracing. If you look at the numbers on where the problems are, right, which is Albany, Georgia, South Side communities, predominantly people of color, our airport, the top 5, one of them shows non-residents, and it has the highest top 5 number, which is in the thousands. And what that probably means is those are people who are headquartered in Georgia as residents, but don't have medical here. In essence, they're commuters. And my theory is that they're out of our airport. And so we have the world's busiest airport. We have, 60,000 employees out of the world's busiest airport, all trafficking through. And there's no surprise now that the airlines are putting up, just like in our supermarkets, the glass pieces. They're separating people on airplanes, which is good. They received the bailout as they should. They're still furloughing. But that's really where we have to get a handle on this, because otherwise, we're going to be back here in 2 months. So to your point, David, yep, Southside communities, people of color, we don't have the same resources. But this CARES Act, with billions of dollars coming to Georgia, coming to City of Atlanta specifically, we have a real opportunity right now. How are we going to restructure? So advocates like Tamara and you, David, and myself, we've been talking about problems with the homeless community, problems with the living wage, problems with labor. Well, that has all inequality, right? Corporate personhood, and how the little person, the regular person, can't fight a corporation. Well, it's all come to a head now. This is all at the forefront. The homeless people can be carriers. We weren't proactive. The people who are essential workers, now they're called essential workers. They didn't have a living wage, right? So they got bonuses. Now that's coming away. Well, so this inequity, right, where billionaires can get these bailouts, right? Hartsfield, the tenants at Hartsfield got abatements. They don't have to pay their rent. But people who are renting on a moratorium for evictions, meaning the evictions are coming, it's just a hold. So how do corporations get treated? How do people get treated? And really our mayor, right? Our mayor in City of Atlanta is at the forefront of all of this, and it's coming to a head. She's got the money. The question is, how are we going to execute it? And I really hope we don't do what we typically do, which is a paralysis analysis situation. We have a theory where the monies go. I like to use our youth as a great example for this. There are all these youth programs. People invest in youth and all this money goes there. But then you see youth selling water, in the middle of the summer off the expressways. Well, if those youth programs were really operating the way they should be, the way we're funding, right? If there was oversight to make sure the money's going where it's supposed to go to be more effectual, right, for all of us, because youth can get into gangs, can get into recidivism, can get into a chain of et cetera, then why do we have youth selling water on the side of the roads everywhere off our expressways? It's because there's a disconnect. So what are we going to do with that money that has come to Mayor Bottoms, to Atlanta? And I'm honestly pretty worried, because I've looked at a track record and I've looked at what's happened as of yet, and I'm skeptical. I don't know that our mayor is. I think she's being very political, very, very smart, but I don't know that she's sincere. And I'll explain that. I don't like to make those claims. I'll explain that, but I want to hear what y'all have to say.
No, go ahead, finish, explain.
Well, here's the track record, in my opinion, with our mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, who has been all over CNN, talking about COVID, receive funding, questioning, criticizing the president, Trump, which I get, and questioning Kemp to a degree, saying the mayor doesn't have to ask, the governor doesn't have to ask me. That was her position initially. And, clearly Biden's interested in Mayor Bottoms. He's interested in Stacey Abrams. He needs people of color vote, which I hope we talk about the Charlemagne thing. But with Keisha Lance Bottoms, her track record is her district, which is now Marcy Overseas District in Atlanta, which is, in terms of median income, very problematic, still very poor areas. That's where the Tyler Perry Studios is. Tyler Perry's negotiated under the Reid administration. Mayor Bottoms came directly out of the Reid administration's no community benefits agreement. The wall is still up. Nothing that says these people across this wall in Oakland City must be hired. So they're not. And the same thing out of Peoplestown. So Peoplestown, Turner Field, no community benefits agreement, nothing guaranteed, despite like 20 organizations there. The Housing Justice League, they're still in a fight, really, with eminent domain. The people of Peoplestown and Summerhill, to a degree, they're still in court talking about these houses that the city is claiming that's under Keisha Lance Bottoms. Now, she inherited that from Reid, but they're kind of like that, and anyone that doesn't see that, that's kind of a strange thing if you don't see that. So where I took in my position is we reached out as whistleblowers, as advocates who have done work. Yvette Avery, you've seen her, the airline, the whistleblower for labor, right? So the problem with our folks who don't have a living wage is they can't organize. And Georgia is a right to work state. So when someone attempts to organize, they take them out because then you got to have regulations. You got to treat these people a certain way and it'll impact an operation. Well, that's a safety factor. And there's such an irony because right now, one of the major airlines in Atlanta is saying, well, we're going to handle this in a safety factor. Well, they can't because the integral part of the organization, it's an equitable structure. And so where I'm going with this with Keisha Lance Bottoms, I don't want to be disrespectful to her name, is we have people who have already taken the L like Yvette. She already got fired for trying to organize. And she's willing to meet with Mayor Bottoms, meaning nobody else has to get terminated. Nobody else has to go through all that. Nobody else has to be in a lawsuit. And Mayor Bottoms, it's been over 8 months now. Whistleblowers like me, I know when I talk about the integral parts of the real estate industry, GREC is going to come down on me, the Georgia Real Estate Commission, because there's things going on internally that are problematic, exacerbating the displacement, which we've seen in lawsuits that she's not aware of. So I have to wonder, she's so smart, why wouldn't she meet? And so when I look at the track record, what I'm guessing is she's smart enough not to meet because then she's got to do something about it. And it's unfortunate, she is an attorney. And it's unfortunate because, housing construction costs are the major issue with affordable housing. And there's a complete way to remedy that, in a 3-part structure. But she's got to be able to allow people at the table to have a discussion. To your credit, Tamara, you had Marshall Rancifer, the housing advocate. The homeless advocate, he hit it on the head. He's like, they don't respect me because I don't have these letters behind my name. But he has all the street credibility and all the street knowledge. Well, those teams should be both. What I hope we don't do is say, oh, well, we need a study. I hope we don't do that. And that's all. I guess that's the header. But this situation with Joe Biden and Charlemagne, I think this ties in, and I think it's
Before we get to that, Robin,
yeah.
Let me just add a couple of things to what you were saying about the safety factors. Which you were talking about. There was a really good interview on Rachel Maddow last night with a woman named Jessica Martinez. Jessica Martinez is the co-chair of the National Council for Occupational Safety and Health. This is I think a union sponsored national organization that raises issues, of occupational safety and health. She says that the office of the OSHA, I'm forgetting now what it stands for, Safety and Health Administration, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, has issued not a single citation to an employer over this whole period of time. And Maddow, said to her, wait a minute, am I hearing you right? Not one citation in this whole period of time. So just to put that in perspective, the meatpacking plants that Rachel Maddow has been exposing these issues in Iowa, in Nebraska, all over the place, they're being given voluntary guidelines. This is not what the CDC does. The CDC before Trump issued orders, directives. You will do this.
Right.
And now it's if you can, if it's convenient,
right.
whatever it is. So we're really in a situation here in the broadest scale. So I think that's exactly what you were saying. By the way, there are almost 300 cases of coronavirus infection at the Vogtle nuclear power plant. Okay.
Yeah.
So, there's some insane stuff going on. And the other thing is that that meat packing plants and poultry processing plants here in Georgia have this same voluntary, well, if it's convenient, if it's not going
Yeah.
to cut into profits kind of thing. So we have, and exactly your point about Atlanta is going on throughout the state. And it's funny because we have Black majority counties that are in the south of the state, and overwhelmingly white majority counties in the north of the state. And one of the things that's going on is that the rural hospitals are under enormous fight. They were under terrible financial strain
Right.
before this, but now people are not coming in to do procedures, because they're so the whole income of rural hospitals is, and one of the quotes that this is from the Project South article says that that there really has to be an entirely different payment system worked out. This fee for service thing is just not working. So there again, the large scale issues that you're raising are we can't use this healthcare model anymore, or the
No,
finance.
it's a great opportunity to really restructure, but to your point, David, Atlanta almost seems to be a micro of the macro. And again, I understand having to be strategic, right? But we need our leader. And if she's gonna, the people working in those meat packing plants, and I saw a video, and I think most people viewed it one way and I saw it a different way, are predominantly lower income, and they're people of color, lower income whites and people of color. So who's coming to work to, get sick? And I saw a video where I think animal advocates kind of used it like, look how dirty and the meat, it is a cruel industry. I think it can be done humanely, but it rarely is. And there was a gentleman or a worker who, you see him, he urinates on like underneath, and they had to shut down the plant because somebody caught it on video, and then continues to work. But nobody asked why he didn't just leave to the bathroom. And I'm positive it's because people were like, we need to produce this. We're behind. We're gassing, such and such. And there's no protection for those workers. So he's damned if he does, or he's damned, he can't even go to the bathroom. He's trying to produce, and he look at Samara's face in their comment. But
there is already been a whole set of exposés about workers on the line peeing into bottles, into plastic bottles, because they don't have any breaks. So I mean, they may have been doing that before all of this.
But this is really a labor issue. It's a lack of representation. It's a lack of protection. And Atlanta, you're huge. Atlanta, Tamara, you're huge on labor. Where did Tamara go? Do you see her? No,
she has absent to her.
I'll be back. Y'all continue.
Yeah.
She's a massive labor. She was endorsed by labor. So really, if people had representation, they would be able to demand, I get a bathroom break and I can't get in trouble for stepping away to go to the bathroom. So I'm not sure where this is going with Atlanta and the mayor, but did you see the Charlemagne the God interview with Joe Biden? What are your thoughts?
I've read about it, and I saw it on secondhand, on the news. I think that people are missing the point.
Okay.
Biden is a gaffe machine. He blurts things out all the time, and in some ways that's endearing. In this case, it was a real presumptuous thing to do, to say that if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. But I think that what Charlemagne the God was trying to get at was, what's your platform for black people, for black Americans? What are you actually? Never mind, all your talk, and I supported this
rhetoric.
I mean, people, commentators have been saying, practically every senator supported the the
Yeah.
Civil Rights Act back in 1996 or whenever it was. So I really think that unless and I think this really goes to ADOS, and to the people who are fighting for a program specifically for African American, for American descendants of slavery, to have their interests heard and addressed. And
Well, I agree with you. It would have been the perfect opportunity for former VP Bryden to answer with reparations.
yeah,
It would have,
exactly.
if he was willing to do that, or if he felt like it wouldn't cost him votes. But see,
Yeah.
that's where, in my opinion, we're messed up. All of us. Not I mean, every single one of us. And I'll tell you why, because I've had a lot of time to contemplate this. I've been very quiet lately because I've been inside. I live alone.
Yeah.
So I've been listening to audiobooks, reading everything. But I really think that among both communities, and I promise I'm going somewhere with this, give me a 1 minute leeway. I think that with lower income white people, when you say, thinking white, etc., acting white, it's a denial, a failure to, I'm in this situation. I don't want to feel like a failure. And so they're easily pitted with their own shame to say, oh, it's the immigrants, it's the Black people, abusing the system, by these, corporate elites and these gatekeepers who executed the 1 in the 9%. And so they get mad at, other people for these conditions, right? So there's a form of denial. But ironically, this might be applicable, and, I'm going to defer to Tamara here, because I've been studying this, to our African American community, because again, there's an internal, when we see our folks giving rhetoric, not following through in action, if they look like us, we don't want to accept it. And there's a level of denial there too, whether it's City of Atlanta, Mayor Reed, Mayor Bottoms. And so if you have both groups, right, and to some degree in a denial state, right, because you never want to think my own family is doing this to me. And I think that's what it boils down to. I think white America doesn't want to look at Trump and believe my own family, my own people are doing this to me, because it's painful. And to some degree in Atlanta, we have Black leadership, and people aren't recognizing it. I put up something in my own district with District 12, and I've stopped drawing conclusions. I've just now recently, gone into just sharing information and letting people decide. City of Atlanta invested millions with 300 acres of green space when we have a housing crisis in my district. All of the council approved it. It was done by a Black councilwoman, my district councilwoman. When people are literally sleeping on the Beltline, and it has become apparent, right, which is green space, it has become apparent that housing is critical, not only for people, but for all of us to be safe. And so I put up the tax records with my district councilwoman, who's gainfully employed for the last 10 years at $65,000 a year, right? As Atlanta City Council, that's what Atlanta City Council makes. Well, the people in my district, the median income are not even $30,000. How can it be? And I put these tax records up to show the same city council person, I want to say, pays less than $500 a year in city taxes. So this revenue, and nobody questioned, like, why does a city council person make in over a decade over $500,000 in a district that has a median income? If you multiply what an airport employee works, the airport is in our backyard, right? It's $11 an hour. $11 an hour might be $500 a week on full time. That's not even $2,000. That's $24,000 a year, and then meaning under 30 full time. Busiest employer, world's busiest airport. That's what someone makes at a not 15 but 11 from employers. What does our district council person make? Nobody even said anything about it. And I honestly, people want to they want to feel better about who it is. But if we do not get out of this denial situation, Joe Biden's response was, in my opinion, cumulative of that. He's dealing with people's emotions. And he in his camp is probably telling him, you can't say reparations because these people will flip based on what they believe. What do y'all think?
Well, I just want to add something to your points about the Atlanta City Council. The median family wealth of a senator, of a U.S. senator, is $3.2 million. That's the median, all right? The median wealth of a member of the House of Representatives is $900,000. So, these folks who are, in the Congress do not, have any connection with the life of the vast majority of us. And Biden, I think that that Egberto said it best. He's there to soothe the nerves of the people who are terrified that the Democratic Party could take away their white privileges, and that's what his function is. And my sense, and here again, Tamara's been kind of quiet about this, but my sense is that I think that the African American community, that it's thrown its weight, or the Democratic Party support for Biden from the African American community, has decided that this is the best we can do, and I think that the part of the failure for that is from the Sanders campaign itself, and the inability of the Sanders campaign to actually push a program that addresses the inequalities between Black and white working people at the same time as it is putting forward a progressive agenda. All right, because there's no way that you are going to get Medicare for all, or a Green New Deal without the power of working people being in solidarity with one another. And as long as the European American working people cannot see their interests, in equality, which is what the Medicare for all is all about.
I'm with you.
Then this is going to be a reform like every other reform, which is taken over by the insurance companies. So,
yeah, I don't see people who are afraid of losing their white privilege, this whole freedom component. Actually, the people that I was mentioning, like the people who believe Trump and see some type of relationship with him and are blaming immigrants and Black people for, where they are, instead of the reality of where they are or who's causing this inequity. I don't see those people going for Biden because Biden was with Obama, and those people are not Obama fans. So that theory, I don't know that.
I don't think that those folks are the white section of the working class. Those people who are supporters, who are coming out with their AK-47s and all of this other stuff, those people are really a sliver of the upper strata of the working class. They have income levels that are $20,000 more than the median income in this country. So we really have to make a distinction between them and a large group of folks who are out there who are.
But then, David, who is Kemp pandering to? Like when Kemp does these, because he's coming Friday, when Governor Kemp does these campaigns or these commercials where he's holding a rifle, and appealing, like who? Yeah. I think that's South Georgia. Like, I could be wrong, but that's what it looks like to me. Look at what happened with, respect, God forbid, the case with the gentleman who was gunned down in the middle of the street over construction. That was South Georgia. That's our backyard. Albany, Georgia's South Georgia. The airport is on the south side. Like, I'm not sure that isn't the reality what these people really believe when you go into South Georgia. There are campsites everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and I'm from South Georgia, so I can speak to like what's happening there. That it is still very racist. Black people are kind of sit back and just say, this is how it is. This is how it's always been. Not a whole lot of push for change. It's just, it's like things are still the same there. That is, South Georgia is old South. I can definitely tell you that.
Yeah, but even in the counties where it's Black majority, the Black majority counties are at 51, 52% African American, and I agree with you. I'm not. That's not the point I'm making. I'm making the point that there are lots of poor whites that are in Black majority counties, and the only thing that they hear from, are Republicans and Kemp. They don't have a Democratic Party. The Democratic Party for them is the Black Party, and there's nobody who's talking to them and saying, I call it, fomenting the class struggle within the white race, so to speak.
I thought Bernie did that. I'm gonna, respect it. I thought Bernie did that. I do, because I think the only reason Bernie didn't come out up front with reparations was to not turn away those people that he was courting. I saw video after video of him in small towns with a lot of white people in the videos.
Yeah, and my estimation is that those congregations, those rallies, were not white working class people. They were college students. They were,
not the ones I saw.
Let me tell you, I was at the last Sanders campaign rally in early March on a first Sunday in March, and I was looking around at who it was. First of all, it was in one of these microbrewery taverns on Edgewood.
Oh yeah, the ones in Atlanta. Yeah. Okay.
And, so, there were a significant number of people of color that were there, but, you got the feeling that who they were the folks who intermingled with European Americans on college campuses, and in kind of, hip neighborhoods, and that kind of thing. So
that might very well be. I could, but I did see an extension on the Sanders campaign to rural America, with lower income white America. And what I personally am not going to do, and I guess I take this personally, I kind of relate to Bernie. I'm not going to let Bernie take the blame for Biden's lack of, or really the full Democratic establishment and their continuance of pushing candidates who will be yes candidates. Tamara is a perfect example of that. Biden is controllable. He listened when they said go behind Obama. This is our ticket in. You'll have your turn when we tell you. That's what it looks like to me anyway. And now it's his turn, and they owe him, and they're like, okay, this is our shot. This is the way that they see, who's winnable, whatever. Bernie was kind of a counter of that. And to me, the Democratic Party is still not really choosing the ideal candidates, because they also have their gatekeepers and their funding, and they probably like the way things are. Those people who make those choices probably like the way things are, not realizing how it's impacting altogether and what they may be really losing. Maybe they've lost their way. The proof is in the pudding. If that weren't true, they wouldn't have done Tamara the way they did. They wouldn't have stuck a white woman who came out of nowhere to run against her. When she's, now she's got to be an independent, because who could take that level of disloyalty and continue to come back for it? No person with self-respect, and so she's, it is what it is. And I see this over and over.
Which is gets us back to Charlemagne the God, and what I think he was trying to get at. I think that what I'm getting at is a little bit more, maybe too subtle a message, because what I'm saying is that is that Sanders and this was the African American director of the Sanders campaign here in Georgia, who spoke at this Atlanta meeting in early March, said that he called Sanders a crossover candidate. And I think what he was meaning by that is that he was like a crossover music, that he spoke for all sections of the working class. But that's not what we need. What we need is somebody who can speak to European American working people about why it is in their interest to prioritize the interests of people of color, and particularly African Americans, because that idea that you're a crossover, you're speaking to everybody, you've got a laundry list, and it always includes anti-racism and environmental.
But for that to be effective, for lower income white people to believe that it's in their best interest for equality to some degree for all, including them, they would have to accept that. They would have to accept two things that they're not willing to accept, in my opinion. One, they don't want to take responsibility for the white privilege that they do receive. Right? The Ahmaud Arbery case was a perfect example. Right? I mean, you couldn't get any clearer than the privilege these people had, the connections. They were never charged. Files were buried. There was a video. It took an entire national outcry for there to be some semblance of justice months later, when this man was gunned down running without a weapon on video in Georgia. But when you say, look, you do have privilege, meaning people will help you in the judicial system, you will get jobs people won't get, you won't get followed around in a store, people will hide files for you, people will go make your DUIs go away, your son will get into this school based on who they know. This is something that is not really widely accepted. And instead, they're buying into the blame game of our corporate elite, Jeff Bezos, all these corporations who lobby and get all their tax breaks, the massive, with our 9% who execute this agenda, including our public servants, right? They're executing it, and they're saying it's the reason your city looks like this, the reason you're not getting the subsidies that you need, the reason your family can't come up is not because of this inequality that we're executing for these lobbyists, is because these lazy Black people don't want to work and they're stealing from the system, and these immigrants are coming to take your jobs, and these DACA students are coming and getting into schools when your kids aren't, and it's their fault. So nothing that Bernie Sanders says until that ideological mess is solved is going to resonate with those people. It's the Democratic Party who is running, the traditional establishment Democratic Party who is running those ads, Occupy Democrats, and showing all these race situations. They're the ones not at the heart. They're trying to go for votes, right? But they don't even understand the constituency anymore. In my opinion, the Democratic Party is lost. In my opinion, I'm not even a Republican. Like, that's crazy for me to say that.
I think I think some of these things are well. I mean, I agree with the basic thrust of what you're saying is that thinking and acting white means blaming people, looking down for blame, for who's causing your problems, as opposed to looking up.
But where are the ads from the Democratic Party putting lower income people, regardless of race, together? Where are they filming in a meatpacking plant showing multiple people there of different races, getting exposed to whatever? There are none.
Yeah, and that's part of the point that I've been trying to suggest maybe
But
going.
that's the Democratic Party. That's
Yeah.
not Sanders, because in my opinion, Senator Sanders has a huge record from when he was in college supporting rights, support equal rights, supporting minority students, on housing continuously. The Democrats don't even like Bernie Sanders. Look at what Hillary said about him. They don't, and Hillary is very traditional Democrat, establishment Democrat.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you about that. But what I'm looking at is the flaws and the weaknesses in the Sanders campaign. All right.
But why?
He's
not even running now. Why? I take this I think I'm taking it a little, just so you know, David, because I'm an advocate, and people look at me like, why didn't you get this done, Robbie? And I'm like, well, shit, there's a whole establishment. What do you think? Don't look at me. I'm not the problem. Look at these structural problems. We're here.
All I'm trying to do, Robbie, is the campaign is pretty much over. And I'm doing an evaluation of what I think he didn't win, so there's something that went wrong, right? In his campaign, it wasn't simply.
Is it him, or is our structure? Is it our electoral college? Is it our democratic establishment structure? You're saying it's a failure of his campaign?
I think that's too simple to do that, and it's uncritical. The campaign needs to have a self-evaluation at this point. I'm not doing this from outside. I would have loved it if Sanders had been able to pull it off. But look at the way that things happened in early March, in those first two Tuesday, Super Tuesday and the next. I mean, it was. There was an overwhelming shift that took place.
I think a backroom deal was made.
Simply say that that's the establishment.
I do. I think a backroom deal was made. We don't have sufficient oversight, despite the fact that we need job creation like nobody's business. What
was it that allowed the establishment to thank you, Paula. He offered aid.
What's his name? Biden. What is Biden offering? What is Biden offering, except if you don't vote for me, you're not black, which is practically an insult. Who the hell is Biden to say that?
Yeah, of course.
Bernie never insulted anybody in public TV on a Charlemagne the God Breakfast Club of all places. Do you realize how far left that is? To take Berto's credit, he doesn't care about that, but I do. I do care about that. Now our choices, because of the Democratic Party, the traditional established Democratic Party, our choices are Trump, who has a record of inappropriate, unethical. There's literally, okay, so we're stuck with Trump now, Paula? So there's an article every day about Trump doing something that gains personal interest for himself and using the government agency to obstruct justice in some way. Every day there's an article about this. So it's the larger perspective, right? And it trickles down. The leadership starts from the top. We have a very similar situation in Atlanta. So we're going to vote for Trump, Paula. Is that right? We're voting for Trump. Okay. Well, damn. Well, let me be real. Okay.
Well, that is a bridge too far for me. But the point that I'm making is not to say that I would not want Sanders to be the nominee, nor am I saying that he would have that he was less electable than Biden is. I think he probably would be more electable. What I am saying is that if you're going to present Black people and other people of color with a white candidate, he's got to be able to speak to other whites, to other European Americans, in a way that pushes the issue of solidarity forward. through equality, and to convince, to have the message that equality is in the interests of European Americans. That's not speaking for Black people. That's speaking to European American working people. And the people that you are talking about privilege, in the list that you gave, some of those things are not racial privileges of the working class. They're real class privileges. What I've been trying to say is that for everything that looks like a status difference, that European American working people pay a price that they can't see. They pay a hidden cost, hidden to them. All right. And if there is somebody out there who is telling them, who is showing them that hidden cost, then they can make some realistic evaluations of where their interests lie. Now, they're not going to do that if they are hypnotized by Trump. But there,
I don't think that it's a working.
There are lots of people who are out there who may be in the Republican Party, who are not, who are for the most part just don't vote, and they are the reason that they are out there is that nobody has asked them. Nobody has actually put forward a case, an argument for where their interests really lie. All right. You're saying that Sanders went out into rural areas. I don't find it. I'll
put some videos up because I personally saw the videos. I saw him talking to like farmers.
Oh, yeah, in the Midwest. Yeah, in the Midwest. Not here in the South. Not poor whites in the South.
Okay. I'm not sure about rural Georgia. I don't know.
No. Okay. I mean, he barely made any campaign stops. Look, he didn't come to Mississippi. The only state, he went to Michigan instead of Mississippi in the last campaign.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if he was trying to get his numbers up, but that being said, he's not even a candidate anymore. I just want to say one thing. I don't think this is a working class privilege. If it's in terms of those examples, there are working class people in South Georgia who, if they were not white, would not have all those benefits. They wouldn't. It's the connections that they know. It's a family, like clannish, like you're in the club, right? And people of color who are working class don't get all those benefits. They don't. So it is not not in my opinion. That being said, where we are now politically, Biden is the candidate for the Democratic Party, and he needs a VP. So I'm curious, who do y'all think? Because there's Stacey Abrams in Georgia. There's Keisha Lance Bottoms, our mayor. There's potentially Kamala Harris. Amy, he just vetted, or so on. So obviously, what do y'all think is going to happen? Because that's where it's at. I mean, maybe it'd be better used to analyze what happened with Bernie later, but right now this is where we're at.
I think when it comes to this VP pick, I'm anxious to hear, because I think that the Democratic Party might get it wrong again. And like when Hillary ran, if Hillary had chosen Bernie as her running mate, and I know that was kind of far-fetched, but if she had chosen Bernie, she would have united this party back when. Maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. So let's see if the Democratic Party gets it right or they get it wrong all over again.
Yeah, and there's another thing to keep in mind, Robbie, and that is that it ain't over, in terms of the primary campaign, because and this is something that the Sanders people have been saying. I mean, I get the our revolution and everything is, we have got to go into the convention with a platform and a program that pushes the Democratic Party to the left. But they have not evaluated that. This is my point, is to say that they haven't evaluated what the strategic weaknesses were of their own campaign. And to, that's the point that I'm trying to get at, is that we still have a struggle going on within the Democratic Party.
When you say their own campaign, do you mean under Sanders?
Yeah,
Okay, but see, he's not a traditional Democrat. He's not an establishment Democrat. Sanders squeezed it. They didn't let him, right? But they didn't help him with that. He went rogue and
No. That could have been the case. He represents a wing of the Democratic Party now, a very powerful wing of the Democratic Party.
Now he's proven, based on what he did, which some might argue is effective.
And yes, and one of the things that he showed was, one of the things that he showed was that you can run a campaign financed from the grassroots. You don't need big corporate supporters to fund the Democratic Party. That's the issue that he has thoroughly discredited, the notion that you have to have big corporate donors to support a Democratic presidential campaign. But at the same time, those corporate donors, who are backing Biden and what you call the Democratic Party establishment, they're still in the game. They still have have control over the party. So when you're talking about the Democratic establishment, you can't say it's simply I'm not sure I want to go all the way into this. I mean, it's 1 minute before the hour now. But what I'm primarily arguing about Georgia is that, yes, you have a lot of poor whites all over Georgia, particularly rural Georgia, who are under the control of the local elites in their county, in their town, and in all of these other places. They are not their privileges, as their racial privileges, do not let them escape from their economic status, their class status. And the people who are running the show in those rural counties, the whites who are the Republican establishment, they are terrorizing those people. Almost, I mean, it's not the same as the terror that Black people. I mean, that's the privilege. The privilege is you get a reduced level of terror.
I honestly, I do not know of any terrorism against white people in South Georgia by white elites. But I'm not saying that that's not happening. I just don't know of it. What I do know of is when I went to South Georgia and I heard from, and these are, don't get me wrong, these are nice, salt of the earth people. But their response to me when I was trying to understand race relations is, we don't have those problems with our Blacks here. And these were poor white. That's what they said to me. That's the quote. We don't have our problems with our
because that's what I tell you. Black people in the South,
I believe
they
you.
Sit back. They don't say anything. They go along to get along. They don't want no trouble. They just,
and that is
they
why
don't have
South
problems with
Georgia
Blacks in the South.
doesn't like the city of Atlanta, because the city of Atlanta is very different race relations here, and the power structure is different here. So it's our mayor, our leader, and ironically, it's almost like the federal government's coming down on Georgia, and so they're looking at who's going to get all this funding, right? Who's going to get the airport? Who's going to get the airport contracts? Because that's all used in campaigns. So city of Atlanta's walking a fine line, because if they screw up, then that goes to Kemp, to Georgia, to basically the state. But really, what now?
Robbie, let's just take the one example of rural healthcare in Georgia. All right, that example, the Republicans have essentially, starved and are destroying rural healthcare in Georgia, particularly by not accepting the Medicaid expansion. Right. So what you are left with is that not only are you losing healthcare, which European Americans are suffering. Poor European Americans in rural Georgia are suffering not as bad as African Americans, but they are suffering from a lack of health care, a lack of good nutrition, a lack of all of those things, and yet they are if they vote, they're voting Republican. So that's the thing that.
So why even bother to try to get their vote? That's the whole thing. If they're like, it's almost it's a numbers.
Because you're leaving those votes on the table. You're leaving them for the Republicans. There is no conflict going on in those areas. There's no class conflict that in which somebody is saying to poor whites that, the reason that you're poor is not
immigrants or black people ripping off the system. Okay, is what?
It's because you have accepted these privileges.
We're going to do a part 2 to this, guys. Hopefully Robbie will check her schedule and see if next Saturday works. Definitely finish this conversation. We are at the top of the hour. I am Tamara Johnson Shealy, your candidate for the United States Senate. I think so many candidates get it wrong. My job is to listen. My job is to take these issues to Washington, and that's exactly what I plan to do. You can find Miss Robbie on her website. I've just put it on the screen, MissRobbieCaban.com, her brand new website. You can find Mr. David Slavin right here on Facebook at Acknowledge the Divide. Again, I am Tamara Johnson Shealy, your candidate for the United States Senate. David and Robbie, we got to finish this conversation next week. It's 5 Saturdays in the month of May, so let's definitely do this next Saturday and finish this conversation. You guys have a great week, and I want to thank you for joining us on this broadcast of Tamara for Georgia. David,
power to the people.
Power to the people.
Thanks, Robbie.